She had profiled monsters for 12 years. Broken men in dark suits would hand her photos of corpses and say, "Help us find him," and she always did. Jenna Rourke saw patterns where others saw chaos. She knew which killer used rope versus tape, which ones liked to pose their victims, and which ones needed to be watched from their mother's basement. But none of her files had prepared her for the man currently asleep in her bed. He looked peaceful, the kind of peace only psychopaths had. Muscles slack, mouth slightly open, hair messy like he'd fought the pillow and lost. His arm was draped over the sheet like any normal boyfriend, except he wasn't. Jenna stared at the scar on his collarbone, noticed the slight twitch in his left eyelid when he dreamed. Every profiler had blind spots, and hers had been him. 6 weeks ago, his name was Drew Keller, a supposed freelance photographer who'd accidentally met her at a cafe in DC. Charming, unassuming, curious about her work, but never too curious, just enough to feel like he cared, just enough to make her trust him. They'd shared wine, jokes, and confessions, and now she realized, looking at the man curled against her Egyptian cotton sheets, that everything she had told him had been turned back on her. Because last night Jenna had found something. She was up late reading through an old case file, one she hadn't thought about in years. A killer dubbed the composer for the way he arranged his victims like symphonies. Victim 1, a librarian, with a broken flute left in her mouth. Victim 2, a music teacher strung up by violin strings. The case had gone cold 3 years ago. Jenna had consulted, of course, and even built a psychological profile the FBI had quietly shelved. Too abstract, they said. Too poetic, she'd moved on. But last night, she saw it on Drew's laptop. An open folder, carelessly left on the desktop. Inside, high-res images, not from newspapers or FBI leaks. These were crime scene originals. Unpublished, intimate blood-slick details and chalk outlines she had never shared publicly. She'd only seen those photos once in the FBI's secured archives. Drew had a copy, and next to that folder, a Word document titled Her. She hadn't opened it, not yet. Her breath had frozen halfway to her lungs, and she'd backed out like the images might leap off the screen. She went to bed, shaking, slept beside him with a kitchen knife under her pillow. At 4:13 a.m., she finally blinked. He was still asleep, but her heartbeat was not. Now, morning light filtered through the blinds, casting slashes across his chest. She forced herself to move, quietly padding to the kitchen. She picked up her phone, hands trembling. FBI, her old contact. No name, just a number. She was about to dial when she heard his voice behind her. "You always make coffee this early." She turned. He was there, shirtless, smiling. Her voice didn't work at first. "Yeah, old habit." He stepped closer. "Rough night," she nodded. "Dreams, something like that." He leaned in, kissed her temple like a man in love. She fought every muscle in her face to keep it steady. By the time he left for a photo shoot, she was already in her car. She didn't go to the FBI. Not yet. Instead, she drove to her office where her real files lived. The private ones. The ones not even the Bureau had touched. She pulled the composer's profile from her archives and laid beside what she now knew about Drew. The alignments were too close. The need for aesthetic staging. The obsession with classical music. His camera gear. His background, what little he had told her, was a minefield of convenient holes. She looked at her wall of victims. All her cases. Faces of men and women. she'd once failed to save. One photo fell off the board. Jenna picked it up. It was a girl, 17, piano prodigy, dead in her own home, staged with a broken metronome ticking on her stomach. The metronome. She closed her eyes. Last week, Drew had given her one. A gift, he said. For your desk, it ticked. Constant, just like in the photo. She walked to her living room, where the metronome sat, innocently pulsing on the mantel. She picked it up. Something rattled inside. She unscrewed the bottom and froze. There, folded tightly, was a photo, black and white, grainy, but unmistakable. It was her, sleeping, taken from above. Her breath cracked. That photo had been taken in her own bed, from directly above. She didn't hear the front door open, didn't hear him come in, only the voice behind her. You weren't supposed to see that yet. She didn't turn around, couldn't. Her body had locked itself into place, heart thudding against her ribs like a war drum. The metronome fell from her hands and hit the floor with a hollow clatter. The ticking stopped, and for a moment, the silence screamed louder than anything she had ever heard. Drew was still behind her. His voice was soft, controlled. You weren't supposed to see that until I was finished. Jenna finally turned. He wasn't smiling now. His eyes weren't kind or curious. They were clinical, measuring, like he was watching her for data, not emotion. And he held something in his hand, a small, black device. She didn't recognize it at first. Then the screen lit up. A live video feed. Of her bedroom. She inhaled sharply. You bugged my house. He nodded. Your bedroom, your car, the office too. You're fascinating, Jenna. You really are. She stepped back, hand brushing the edge of the coffee table. Why me? You already know the answer. His head tilted. You're the profiler. Profile this. It came in a rush, then memory, fear, fury, all crashing together. She thought about the wine they'd shared, the late-night conversations, the questions he'd asked her about fear, about how killers picked their victims. You used me, she whispered. No, he said, stepping closer. I studied you. You're not a victim. You're my equal. I've been searching for someone like you for years. The Bureau trained you to understand us, to understand me. But they never really did they? They used your mind, then discarded your warnings. They called the composer case too poetic. She gritted her teeth. You killed them, he shrugged. I composed them. Jenna's hand tightened around the ceramic coaster on the table. You think this is admiration. I think it's the first honest connection you've had in years. He moved to the side, and she saw now he wasn't alone. Someone else stood just outside the hallway. A woman, bound, gagged, eyes wild with panic. Jenna's breath hitched. Drew raised a brow. You've got 30 minutes to solve it. Solve what? He tossed a flash drive onto the floor. It skidded toward her. This contains her story. Her pain, everything. You've got 30 minutes to read it, understand it, and tell me who she is. Why I chose her, if you fail. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Jenna lunged for the drive, heart pounding. He walked out, closing. The door behind him like this was some kind of twisted interview. She scrambled to her laptop, plugged in the device. A single folder, Sonata 8. Inside were journal entries, photos, voice recordings. The woman's name wasn't given directly, but clues were scattered dates, school records, old music programs. The voice memos hinted at abuse, A controlling piano instructor. Perfectionism forced on her. Repressed trauma. Jenna scanned faster. 17 minutes left. Her hands moved without thought, her profiler mind switching on like a machine under pressure. Connections formed, names cross-referenced. The girl's identity crystallized in front of her. Charlotte Ellison, piano prodigy, missing 2 weeks. Ago, news media had barely touched it. But then the voice memo. He used to make me sit still for hours. Said my pain made the music better. Jenna froze. It wasn't just about Charlotte. It was about him, Drew. The instructor wasn't Drew, but he mirrored the abuse, then punished it in others, repeating his own trauma like an echo chamber of control. 12 minutes left. Jenna ripped open her drawer, found the burner phone she never told anyone about, the FBI contact. Agent Rivas, she dialed. Rivas, came the voice on the other end. This is Jenna Rourke. I need extraction at my home, immediate. Code black. He's the composer. His name is Drew Keller. The line cut, static dot. Her heart dropped. The door creaked. He was back, but not alone. Charlotte in front of him, and a knife pressed lightly to her throat. You figure it out yet? He asked calmly. Jenna nodded. Her name is Charlotte Ellison. She reminds you of someone. Someone who hurt you. His grip tightened. A flicker in his eyes. Your instructor, Jenna said. The one who taught you pain before music. You couldn't save yourself back then. So now you punish others who carry that pain. You control their endings. You rewrite their symphonies. He didn't move, didn't speak, but something in his jaw cracked. His mask slipped. Jenna stepped forward slowly. You didn't bring her here to die. You brought her here because part of you wants to be stopped. Just like part of you came to me because you needed to be seen. For a second, it worked. His grip loosened. Then a loud crash exploded outside. The front window shattered. Tactical. Flashbangs flooded the room in smoke and noise. Shouting, boots, screams. Drew grabbed Charlotte and bolted through the back. Jenna tried to follow but, to agents, tackled her down. We've got her. Target fleeing east. No, she screamed. He's still got her. She fought to her feet, blood pounding. But Drew and Charlotte were gone. Vanished into the smoke and chaos. And on her kitchen counter, he'd left something, another marrow. Ticking, this one had a note taped underneath. Next time, your turn. The metronome wouldn't stop. Jenna smashed it with her fist, but even then, the broken pieces seemed to echo in her skull. She stood alone in her kitchen, heart hammering like a war drum, breath tight and short. Drew had vanished again this time with a hostage and even the FBI couldn't track him. Agent Rivas paced behind her, talking fast into his cums, but all Jenna could hear was the ticking in her head. Jenna, Rivas finally said, we've swept the area. He's gone. But the girl's prints match Charlotte Ellison. She's real. He wasn't bluffing. Jenna didn't answer. Rivas hesitated, then asked the question hanging in the room. Why didn't you tell us sooner? About him. She turned slowly, meeting his eyes. Because I didn't know. Not at first. And when I did, it was too late. He nodded grimly, then handed her a sealed bag. Inside, a small audio recorder retrieved from the shattered metronome. We found this taped to the bottom. She plugged it into her laptop and pressed play. Drew's voice came through clear, steady, intimate. You were always the end, Jenna. The last composition. The one who could finally hear the whole symphony. If you're listening to this, I'm giving you the second movement. 3 days, 3 victims, 1 key. Find me before it ends, or they die unfinished. Rivas leaned in. We need to get you somewhere secure. Jenna shook her head. No, he wants me to play. What? She opened a drawer, pulled out a map, pinned it to the wall. He's escalating, turning it into a public performance now. That message, it's not a taunt, it's an invitation. Over the next 2 hours, Jenna and the FBI dug through old composer files. But something wasn't adding up. The pattern was off. His previous victims were all musicians, tied to performance spaces or music schools. But now, the clues felt ... disconnected. The names tied to the journal entries on the flash drive had no musical link. Then Jenna noticed something else. Each of the journal entries mentioned silence, not just as absence, but as punishment. The phrase silent treatment kept surfacing. One entry even mentioned a childhood spent in an institution where no one was allowed to speak. She froze. Not music. Silence. Drew wasn't building a new symphony. He was erasing one. Get me the records on defunct juvenile facilities in the mid-Atlantic from the late 90s, she barked. Rivas nodded and radioed it in. 30 minutes later, a name came up. Red Hollow Institute for Behavioral Correction. Closed in 2004 after multiple allegations of abuse and sensory deprivation therapy. Students forbidden to speak. Music banned. Jenna stared at the file photo of the place. A prison for children. A place designed to kill sound. Drew had been there. It explained everything. But then her phone rang. Unknown number, she answered. Drew's voice, almost playful. Hello, Jenna. She stiffened. Where's Charlotte? She's safe. For now, you found Red Hollow, didn't you? I did. Then you know why I chose her. Why I chose them. Jenna's throat tightened. They were all patients there. Patients. Drew chuckled. No, they were staff. Staff who survived the investigation. They moved on, started over, but they never paid. Jenna felt the ground shift beneath her. You're targeting the people who ran the facility. Yes, and one more. The one who shut it down. The whistleblower. The one who left us behind. Jenna whispered, me. Drew didn't answer directly. 3 days, Jenna. But not just to stop me. To remember. You were there. You just forgot. The call ended. She stared at the phone, shaken. Then Anne. Image began to claw its way through her mind. A room, blue walls. A music box shattered on the floor. A girl screaming, but no sound came out. She sat down hard. Rivas turned to her. Jenna, what did he mean, you were there? She barely managed to speak, I think. I think I was one of the kids at Red Hollow. But you would have remembered, would I? She whispered. Not if they took it from me. The world spun. She suddenly understood the composer's obsession with silence, with rewriting endings with her. He wasn't just taunting her. He was trying to make her remember. And there were still 2 victims. Left. Her laptop pinged. New email. No sender. No subject. Just a link. She clicked. It turned. A live stream opened. A man, bound, gagged, crying. Behind him, a chalkboard with one phrase written in trembling white. Why didn't you hear me? Jenna looked at the timestamp. The feed was live. And behind the man, she saw something else. An old mural, faded, but familiar. It used to be painted across the intake wall at Red Hollow. Drew was already there, waiting, with his next victim. And maybe, her own buried past. The mural on the wall behind the bound man wasn't just a memory, was a map. Jenna knew it the second she saw the chipped blue paint shaped like a broken lyre. She'd traced that shape with her finger as a child, sitting alone in timeout. The fragments of memory bled through now, sharp and disorienting, a hand forcing her into silence, the cold metal of a punishment chair. The overwhelming pressure to never speak, never cry, never hear. She hadn't just profiled killers all her life. She had been shaped by one of the institutions that created them. Agent Rivas watched her closely as she traced the mural's outline on her screen. This was a part of Red Hollow. Jenna nodded, voice low. The intake hall. Only the new kids saw it. After your first week, they repainted the walls white. Sterile, forgettable, like you were supposed to forget yourself. But that means... Drew. Rivas trailed off. He was there at the same time as me. We were children together. The realization sent a chill through her. She remembered a boy, now always, in the far corner. Wouldn't speak, wouldn't blink. They called him Echo because he never said anything original, just repeated questions he heard. But the eyes, they were the same. Drew had been Echo, and she hadn't recognized him. The live stream continued. The bound man, middle-aged, pale, trembling. Jenna scanned his face and pulled up old reports. Dr. Calvin Mears, one of the behavioral directors at Red Hollow, accused but never charged. He's one of them, she muttered, and Drew's going to kill him, unless I stop him. Rivas handed her a bulletproof vest. We're not letting you go in alone. But Jenna stepped back. You don't understand. If he sees you, he'll disappear again. He won't kill Mears right away. He wants me to find him. He needs me to. Rivas hesitated. And you're sure you can handle it? Jenna met his eyes. I've been handling him since I was 10. The drive to the Red Hollow ruins took just over an hour. The facility sat rotting in a forgotten field of ivy and rust. The building looked like it had exhaled and never inhaled, again collapsed, hollowed. Gasping, she parked in front of the overgrown gates and stepped out alone. Rivas and his team waited half a mile back on silent radios. Jenna moved through the broken glass doors, her flashlight flickering across peeling walls and shattered floor tiles. Memories returned like ghosts. The isolation rooms, the soundproof chambers, the intake mural now faded beyond recognition, yet still pulsing with buried meaning, and then music, a faint melody. She followed it down a hallway to a room once used for disciplinary reinforcement. Now it was his stage. Drew stood inside, calm, composed, and barefoot. Mears knelt behind him, gagged, tears streaking down his face. Jenna stopped in the doorway. He looked up, smiled. Welcome back. Let him go. Drew nodded to the corner. You always did get to the point. That's what made you different. You remember me, she said quietly. I never forgot. You sat 3 cells down. You were the only one who hummed to yourself. Even when they beat it out of you, I thought you were gone. They said I aged out early, but really, I just ... disappeared, like they taught us. He stepped aside and let her see Mears fully. The man whimpered, seeing Jenna. You know what he did, Drew said. You felt it too. But you got out and forgot. I didn't forget. They erased it. Drew's eyes sharpened, and now, I remember. They stood in silence for a long moment, 2 broken echoes of a forgotten place. Then he moved toward her slowly, handing her a scalpel, his life or his confession, your call. She took the blade, fingers trembling. "This isn't justice." "No," Drew whispered. "It's the end of the song." Jenna turned to me. His eyes bulged with fear. She saw not just the man, but the terrified children behind him, herself, Drew. "All of them. I won't kill him," she said. Drew nodded. "I hoped you'd say that." Then he raised his hand and a device strapped to Mia's chest began blinking red. A bomb. Jenna's scream caught in her throat. Drew turned and ran. She lunged forward, frantically cutting at the man's restraints. The blinking sped up. "Bomb squad won't make it," Rivas said through her earpiece. "You've got less than 90 seconds. Jenna's mind raced. The device was wired, delicate, a trigger hidden in the harness. Touching it wrong would detonate it. She remembered something. Drew's early murders, some victims, were rigged with devices that looked like bombs but weren't. She gambled it was psychological. 60 seconds, she slid her knife under the harness edge. "Carefully, me," Ark sobbed. She cut upwards slow, shallow, no. Explosion, she cut faster. The harness slipped off and she tossed it into the far corner, just as the timer hit 0. No blast fake, she collapsed to her knees, shaking. Mia's hyperventilated. Her earpiece crackled. "We've got Drew's trail. He fled into the woods. Drones have eyes on him." But then Jenna saw Ita new livestream opened on her phone. Not Drew, not Charlotte herself, sleeping, taken from inside her apartment again, except this time, the camera panned. She wasn't alone in the image. Someone else was standing at the foot of the bed, a child, a little girl. She wasn't real, she was Jenna, at age 10. And the caption below read, "The final memory has been unlocked. Now let's see if you can survive it." Jenna stared at the image on her screen, unable to breathe. It wasn't just a threat, it was a reconstruction. The room in the video was a perfect replica of her childhood bedroom. The peeling wallpaper with the stars, the cracked dresser, the blanket she remembered hiding under during the worst nights at Red Hollow. The little girl standing at the foot of the bed had her face, her eyes, but hollow, too calm, too still. A ghost copied from memory and fed into a nightmare. She touched the screen. The caption flickered once more. "The final memory has been unlocked. Now let's see if you can survive it." Rivas's voice cut through her earpiece. "We lost Drew's signal. He's not in the woods anymore." "It was a decoy," Jenna whispered. "He's already inside my apartment." "What?" "He's using my past, my trauma as a weapon. And now he's inside the one place that still felt safe." Rivas cursed under his breath. "We're dispatching a team, Ita. 12 minutes. He'll be gone by then." She was already moving, sprinting back through the dark shell of Red Hollow, throwing open the driver's side door, tires spinning on cracked pavement. As she drove, something deeper than rage boiled inside her. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Drew wasn't just killing old staff. He was building to something, reconstructing his trauma and hers, until they overlapped perfectly. The killings weren't random. They were rehearsals, and the final performance was going to be her. 10 minutes later, she reached her apartment complex. The door to her unit hung slightly open. Jenna's breath caught. Gun drawn, she stepped inside. The living room was untouched. Even the shattered metronome had been reassembled and placed carefully back on the mantel. The kitchen light flickered overhead, and then a laugh, soft, childlike. She turned sharply. It had come from her bedroom. The door was shut. She stepped closer, every instinct screaming to run. She opened it. Slowly, The room was wrong. The walls were papered in old documents, police reports, juvenile records, school files, were blacked out, redacted, shredded, and stitched back together with tape. Photos of Red Hollow victims and staff lined the ceiling, their eyes scratched out. And in the center of the room was a small bed. A little girl sat on it. The same girl from the video. Jenna stared at her own younger self. The child looked up. "Why didn't you help me?" she whispered. Jenna's knees buckled. She didn't realize she was crying until the salt hit her lips. "I didn't know," she whispered back. "I didn't remember." The child smiled sadly. He did. Then the door slammed shut behind her. Jenna spun around. Dan Drew was there, pale, calm, his hands behind his back. She raised the gun. He didn't flinch. "This room," he said softly, "is exactly how I remember yours at Red Hollow. You don't remember, but I do. I watched you hum when they took away our voices. You were the only music we had left." "You're sick," she said, voice shaking. "This ends now." He stepped closer, eyes glittering. "That's what you said back then, when they dragged me out of my cell. You said, 'This isn't right. We have to tell someone,' and then you never did." Jenna blinked. That memory, it hit her like a train. A hallway. A small boy echo dragged away in the night. She had watched and said nothing. "They told me you were transferred," she whispered. "I screamed," Drew said. "But you didn't come. I was 10. He smiled. "Exactly." He pulled his hands from behind his back, holding a recorder. He pressed play. It wasn't music this time. It was her own voice, sobbing. "I don't want to be here anymore." He'd stolen it from one of the old therapy tapes. "I saved this," Drew said, "because it's real. Because under all the logic and profiles and science, this is still you, just a scared little girl who thinks silence is survival." Jenna lowered the gun. He stepped forward. "Now," he whispered, "I want you to choose. You can shoot me, or you can take her place." She frowned. "What?" He pointed to the child version of her still sitting on the bed. "You want to redeem yourself, then become the memory. Let her go, take her pain, I'll erase her, and you can live in her place, locked in silence, forever." "This is insane." He pulled a syringe from his pocket. "1 injection. You'll sleep, and you'll become the ghost. The memory, the silence." "No," he stepped closer. "Yes, because I know you, Jenna. You don't believe in justice anymore, only guilt. You've profiled so many killers because you've been searching for yourself. And now, you found you." She stared at the syringe, at the child, at the walls, and then she laughed. Drew blinked. "What's funny?" She smiled coldly. "You forgot one thing. I never stopped humming. Not at Red Hollow. Not in the darkness. And I'm not starting now." She raised her gun and fired. The syringe flew from his hand, shattering against the wall. He lunged at her, screaming, but she dodged, tackled him, slammed his head against the floor. Rivas and his team burst through the door seconds later, guns raised. It was over, almost, because then the little girl stood up, walked to Jenna, touched her hand, and whispered, "I still remember, but now, ... so do you," and vanished. Jenna collapsed, and from the hallway, someone called out, "We have a problem." It was one of the agents. He held up a phone, screen flashing. Another video had just gone live. But it wasn't Drew. It was someone else, a woman's voice. "You found the composer, But you forgot the conductor. Jenna's blood turned to ice. There was another. Jenna lunged for the phone, her heart a clenched fist in her chest. The video on screen flickered to life dimly lit, shaky but deliberate. A figure moved through an abandoned auditorium, rows of dust-covered seats stretching like a graveyard of forgotten applause. At the center of the stage stood a woman, tall and poised, her silhouette sharp against the glow of a single spotlight. Her face emerged from the dark. Jenna staggered. It was her, but older, not physically emotionally the same bone structure, the same eyes, but colder, more calculating. The woman in the video smiled. "Hello, Jenna. You don't remember me, but I remember everything. You profiled the composer. Brilliant work. You should have known he wasn't working alone," Jenna whispered. "Who the hell are you?" The woman on screen answered like she'd heard the question. "I'm the one who taught him how to listen." The screen cut to black. Then another file, autodash, played. Audio only. A voice, soft, measured. "What is your name?" asked a man. A girl's voice replied. "She calls me Clara." The name hit Jenna like a jolt. Clara, the one red hollow staff whispered. About a model subject in the early experiments. A girl who thrived under sensory deprivation, who developed an uncanny gift for observation reading body language, predicting behavior, finishing sentences before they were spoken. Red Hollow didn't just break children. They built monsters, and Clara had been their masterpiece. Revis appeared. Beside her, eyes narrowed. "We pulled Clara's files years ago. No photo. She vanished after the shutdown." Jenna muttered. She didn't vanish. She evolved. They returned to HQ. Within hours, teams were combing through Red Hollows. Black site files. Jenna locked herself in a side room with coffee, her laptop, and one of the old behavioral experiment logs she had kept hidden in her private archives. She pulled out the one marked CO1, Clara. The girl had been silent her entire childhood, but she drew things, rooms, faces, patterns, things she couldn't have possibly seen, things that predicted violent incidents before they happened. Drew hadn't found. Clara had found Drew. And now Jenna saw if the real composer wasn't the man she'd hunted. He was the instrument. The conductor had always been Clara, anew. Email pinged, from an address labeled simply, Maestro. The subject, your final rehearsal. Attached, a location GP as coordinates, deep in the Virginia wilderness, and a message. 1 hour, bring no one, come alone, or this time, it won't be a rehearsal. Jenna grabbed her bag. Revis stepped into her path. "You're not going. I have to. She's orchestrating everything. Drew was just her prologue. Clara is the symphony. I can't authorize that. I'm not asking." She left before he could stop her. The drive was quiet. Too quiet. The sun had nearly set by the time she reached the coordinates and abandoned. Music conservatory swallowed by the forest. Vines tangled across collapsed walls. Bats skittered in the rafters, but the inside, pristine. Someone had restored it. A metronome ticked steadily from within. She followed the sound down a narrow hallway into a large chamber that looked like a dissected theater. Strings stretched from the ceiling like a spider's web. Instruments lay on velvet-covered chairs, smeared with names scrawled in ink. The names of the Red Hollow victims. In the center stood Clara, real, alive, and impossibly calm. "You made it," she said. Jenna raised her gun. Why, Drew? Why now?" Clara stepped toward an old grand piano and began playing a haunting, simple melody. Because silence wasn't enough anymore. Red Hollow taught us to survive, but I taught Drew how to express. He composed pain. I conduct it. You turned him into a weapon. I turned him into a mirror, just like you. You think profiling makes you safe from what you really are. Jenna's hands trembled. You killed people. No, I freed them. They created us, then walked away. I made them listen one last time. Jenna stepped closer. Why call me here? Because, Clara said, voice softening, you're the only one left who understands the song. And because it's your turn to finish it. From the shadows behind her, movement dot, a figure emerged. Drew dot, alive, but different dot. Blank, dash-eyed. Wearing a collared device rigged with wires, controlled. Clara whispered, conductors don't play the music. They guide the instruments. Now you'll understand what it means to truly lose control. She raised a small remote. Jenna fired. The shot struck the remote from Clara's hand just as Drew lunged. But he didn't attack. He collapsed, eyes wild, gasping, free. Run, he choked. Jenna turned, but Clara was already gone. Smoke flooded the conservatory. Explosives detonated above. The ceiling groaned. Jenna grabbed Drew by the arm. Move. They barely made it out before the roof caved in behind them. Outside, Drew fell to his knees. She's not done. No. Jenna looked into the woods and saw something. A single music sheet fluttered against a tree. She pulled it free. The title read, Finale, Rourke in C minor, and scribbled underneath, in Clara's tight, perfect handwriting, to finish the symphony, the conductor must fall. But are you ready to conduct without becoming me? Jenna felt the weight of the final movement crashing down, because this wasn't the end. This was her audition. The forest felt too quiet. Jenna stood at the edge of the ruins. The music sheet crumpled in her hand, the title still burning into her mind like a curse. Finale, Rourke in C minor. Clara hadn't just written it, she'd composed. Future, piece by piece, movement by movement, Clara had turned her entire life into a symphony of guilt, memory, and murder. And now, there was only one way left to end the performance. She turned to Drew. He sat slumped against a tree, blood trickling from the side of his head, the collar finally disabled. She used you, Jenna said. Drew didn't look up. I let her. Why? Because when I was with her, I didn't feel broken. I felt understood. Jenna knelt beside him. She isn't understanding. She's control. Red Hollow trained her to manipulate pain like it was a language, and she turned that language into a weapon. He looked at her, eyes hollow. She said you'd never stop her. That if I let you live, you'd hunt her. Jenna stood slowly, her voice sharp with steel. She's right. That night, she didn't go home. She went back to the bureau, alone in the war room. She pinned every piece of Clara's story onto the wall. Every victim, every location, every whispered name from Red Hollow's forgotten corridors. But the pattern didn't form a list, it formed a shape, a circle. Each location Clara had struck wasn't random. It was chosen for acoustics. She wasn't just reenacting memories. She was building something. A finale. Rivers stormed in. You went dark for hours. Where the hell were you? Following the rhythm, Jenna said. He stared at her wall. You think she's planning something bigger? Jenna nodded. Everything Clara does is about sound and silence. Red Hollow made her that way. She spent her childhood in a void, so now she creates echoes. Rivas leaned closer. What kind of finale? She pulled up a blueprint on the projector. An abandoned amphitheater in the outskirts of Baltimore, long decommissioned, acoustically perfect. Seats over 600, but now, its website supposedly dead, had a single update. Private. Event. No admission. Dated for tonight. Jenna turned to Rivas. She's staging a performance with a full audience. You think she's going to kill people in front of witnesses? Jenna shook her head. She doesn't want to kill them. She wants them to hear. They moved in silent convoy. Bureau, tactical units surrounded the amphitheater perimeter, but Jenna went in alone. She had to. Clara would vanish at the first sign of pressure. This was a performance, not a trap. And she wanted her audience inside. Every seat was filled, not with people but with mannequins, each dressed as someone from Jenna's life. Her mentors, her victims, her past cases. Dozens of them, frozen in place, staring and on the stage. Clara conducting a string quartet played beside her real musicians. Blindfolded, hands trembling as they obeyed her gestures. Above them, suspended by a thick chain, hung Rivas, unconscious, alive, dangling over sharpened steel bars. Jenna stepped into the aisle. Clara smiled without turning, right on cue. Let him go. Clara motioned with her hand. The music stopped. The musicians set down their instruments and fled backstage. I always hated the endings, Clara said softly. Stories resolve, symphonies fade, people clap and forget. But pain lingers. I didn't want a finale. Jenna, I wanted an echo. Jenna raised her gun. No more echoes. Clara turned to face her, then shoot me, right now, end it. Jenna hesitated. Rivas groaned above the chain, groaning under his weight. You kill me, Clara said, and the chain drops. Jenna aimed at the rigging instead. I've profiled you, Clara. You don't actually want to die. You want someone else to end the song so. You don't have to. Clara's jaw twitched. You killed Drew's pain. You controlled mine. But the truth is, you're terrified of being forgotten. Jenna fired once. The chain snapped. Rivas dropped into a net hidden beneath the spikes. Alive, Clara rushed her, blade in hand. They struggled across the stage, crashing into instruments. Stumbling over wires, Jenna struck her jaw. Clara twisted and sliced her arm. They grappled in a brutal, silent dance until Jenna pinned her, gun to her chest. No more music, Jenna whispered, but Clara smiled, even through bloodied lips. I already gave them the encore. She nodded toward the speakers. A new track began to play. It wasn't music, it was Jenna's voice. Dozens of therapy tapes, profiler interviews, memories. Clara had spliced them into one recording, one profile, for the world to hear. The speakers boomed Jenna's deepest secrets, her failures, her self-doubts. Turn it off. Jenna screamed. Clara whispered, let them hear the truth. Jenna stood frozen. Then she turned, faced the mannequins, faced herself. She walked to the control panel and shut the system down, then returned to Clara. The woman didn't resist. It's over, Jenna said, but Clara simply closed her eyes and said, it's never over. 2 weeks later, Jenna sat in a recording booth. This time, her choice, her voice, calm, honest. I've hunted killers for most of my life, but I've also run from one, from myself, from the silence they left in me. Clara didn't win, but she reminded me the worst killers aren't always out there. Sometimes they're what we let live inside us. She pressed stop. The tape would go to a new program, Rehabilitating Trauma. Survivors through exposure and storytelling. Outside, Drew waited in a van, guarded, monitored, but healing. Slowly, Rivas was back at work, scarred but alive, and Jenna, she wasn't profiling killers anymore. She was finally profiling herself, until a package arrived. No return address, inside. One item, a baton, and a note. The orchestra isn't finished. You just haven't heard the rest of us yet.